Well, I'm just about ready to put the guts back in there, and see, it's got two little prong goodies on there, and then there's a screw right there, and that screw holds that end up, and then you plug it in. And you see, I just pushed that back. I cut a little piece of sheet metal, drilled some holes in it, put a screw in there, and screwed that. I was going to put a screw there too. I started to put a screw there so I could get that one tight, and then I thought, hey, I don't need to waste my screw on that. This is just going to be held back because it's spring loaded anyways. I could put another screw right there, but I don't know if I'm going to. I think I'm just going to leave that. That was the tabs that I broke off from before, because this has a mounting bracket that goes back beyond that that's screwed in. It's not going anywhere. And then see, the bracket that was on there, I just drilled a little hole and put a screw back in there, held that exactly where it went. And then remember this top piece, I cut it in half. I drilled a hole in there. I rebent this. It's held up with that little nib, and those right there, I had to rebend that, push that up, pre-drilled a hole in there from before, then drilled it all the way through because there's a wood stud. That's the ceiling joist actually right there. And I just ran the screw up there. You know, do I have to put a screw way up there? No. That's what I'm going to do. And you know what? That's going to take care of this exhaust fan. I'm glad I tore that apart to get in there to do that inspection. Okay, that's it. That'll be easy from there. You see how that fits? You just unplug that. There's the little mounting screw right there. And then the two nibs fit in those little slots back there. That holds up the back. So if you ever need to take one of those down, that's how you do it. In case you ever need to replace your motor, sometimes you can replace your motor that way. Take it down to the hardware store, take it apart, take it down here, and sometimes they'll sell the whole square piece. Other times maybe it's just the motor, and as long as those two screw areas will fit, and it may fit up in there, you know, and then you can take the fan off, reattach the fan, or get it with the same fan. Okay, let's turn this back on, make sure it works. Hey. Oh, you know what? It could be hitting the, I'm gonna have to look at that, because remember, I put those two screws in right in here, and I think that's hitting that screw. I don't know. I might be able to slide this over a little bit and have it miss that screw, or take it out, put a different screw in there, and you know, I might have to do that. Silly thing. Okay. All right. Joe's work is never done. Well, another head scratcher for sure. Those screws right there were not touching it at all. And right in there, to put that screw in there, I had to wedge it over, and once it tightens up, it's funny because once it tightens up, it moves this over this way just a hair, and that little bit causes this whole thing not to turn. Isn't that funny? Because I took this and plugged it in, and here, I'll plug it in out here. I'll plug it in and show you. I'll show you that it works here. Look at that. Any direction I've got this, it works. And I put it back in there, turned it, and it started working a little bit. I left the screw loose just a hair, and it started, then it stopped. And so what I'm going to do, you know, at first I thought, well, maybe something's gumming this up, but no, it turns fine. Once there's a slight wedge on it, just a hair, it causes this not to go. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm just gonna drill another screw next to this, a little bit bigger, a big enough hole for a sheet metal screw or a wood screw. I think I'm just gonna use a wood screw. And I'll have the hole big enough, so I'm just gonna use that screw right there. I'm gonna make it big enough so the threads go through that, but then I'm gonna drill a smaller hole up into the housing, and then I'll be able to tighten this right up, and I think it's gonna work. I'm gonna try that and see if it's gonna work, because I thought, okay, I'm gonna have to go back to the store. Do I have to go back to the store? Take this apart like I was telling you and get a whole new assembly? No, it's because it's been wedged, and because I took this apart, bent it, cut it, I put it back together, but it's hardly, like I say, hardly wedged up here at all. And that little bit is causing that whole thing not to work. I tried it a couple different times, and so I thought, okay, phooey on that. Instead of tightening it up with that big screw. See, here's the screw that was in there. I'm not even going to use that. I'm not even going to do it. I'm just going to put another screw next to it, and I'll tighten it up, and I'll just do it that way and not get the plug perfectly in here, and then it will work, because I've already tried it. Okay, and it'll work. It'll be fine. Well, I haven't plugged this in yet, and I wanted you to see what I see. I haven't turned it on just yet, but see, I drilled a new hole. I made that hole bigger, and I made a smaller hole into this, and this was pretty stout stuff. I needed to make sure there was no wires back in there, and I started out with a smaller drill bit, and then I increased it until I knew that this screw would screw up into it. And it's off a little bit. This should actually be tight up to that, but when I did that, it wedged this over, and it made this not turn. And so now I'm going to plug this in. I've got make sure that's off over there. I'm going to plug that in like so, and I'm crossing my fingers that it's going to work this time. Look at that. Just because of that. Can you believe that? And so, hey, 2 ways to skin a cat, right? Just sometimes you have to Joe Guyver it and make it work. Okay. Looks like everything's okay. And remember, there was a gap over here from before. Okay? And that's just how it's going to live. And actually, after doing all that tweaking, it's up flush to there. Because remember, I was going to push this end up because it was sticking down, and I would have drilled a hole 1/2 inch above this 1/2 inch sheetrock, the face of it, put a screw in there all the way, and that would have been my shim to keep that pushed up. Well, it seems to be pushed up just fine right now. Okay. I'm going to leave it and call it good. If it ever started chattering or something, I could wedge this out, put a little caulking in there, let it push back. And in fact, I might do that if it starts rattling when I put the cover on. I don't think it's going to, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. Oh, I remember what I was going to show you. I was going to show you my little flashing. Remember, I saved some little pieces of flashing. Here's a little piece out of that metal stud that I had, and I cut a little piece off, and there's that last little bit. I could bend it. Here's another piece of the stud that I was saving, remember? And it's always good to have little pieces like that. And let me show you that metal stud if you weren't with me from before. I bought it at the Home Depot. It came 10-foot length, and it's a piece of track for building metal stud walls. Here's a little piece of it. See, I took there's another piece of the track. I took my tin snips into the store and I cut it in half, 5 feet, because it was 10 foot long. See? And I can use this for all kinds of sheet metal pieces of trim and shims and straps and all that kind of stuff. And if you don't have that, hey, that's a good way to do it. And you know, you can buy little pieces of galvanized sheet metal. Here's 2 pieces I got at the Home Depot, okay? And I forget what gauge that is. It's small enough, strong enough, but yet small enough to where you can cut it with a with tin snips. I think that's 24 gauge. I think this is 24 gauge. And see, they just came in this length, just like this. That was like $7. And that piece of track was, oh, I don't know, $7 or $8 for a whole big old long piece. That's 25 gauge on that track. And they have other pieces of flashing. I actually needed a piece of flashing that was 18 by 18. And I went to the Home Depot a couple times and they didn't have 18 by 18. I thought they might have 12 by 12, 18 by 18, 24 by 24. Well, they had a 24 by 36, I think, for almost, oh, I forget what it was, $27, $28. And they didn't have it in stock. So I went back 3 or 4 different times and I thought, you know what? Phooey on that. Maybe I can do it a different way. I'm always trying to think about how to do things different ways. And so I saw these 2 pieces of flashing there, and these were what was that? 12 by 24, I think. And I needed 18 by 18. Well, you know, I'm just putting it on the floor, and I'll show you that another time. And so I'm going to just overlap one on top of the other, and then I'll cut off a little piece of the flashing because I don't need 24/18, and I'll have a 6-inch piece. I'll have a 6 by 12-inch piece of flashing for, you know, who knows what down the road. And then on one of these other ones, when I overlap it, I'll have another piece that I don't really need up there. And so I'm going to cut that off. I got my 10 snips. I'll just zip it off, and I'll have some more flashing. That's a good way to have flashings, and that's, you know, you just never know when you're going to need it. And plus, it's easy to store. And I've used little bits of flashing for shims, for straps, for little L-angle brackets, for all kinds of stuff. So don't forget that when you're at the store. Now, what am I going to talk about next time? Well, I have no idea. I never know what I'm going to do next, but it might have something to do with these doorknobs. Hey, well, that's all I got for this time. But I'll be back with more videos. Glad I got that figured out.